Hare Krishna, everyone. So today we're going to look at chapter 8, verse 6. But before we move on, let's just do the pranam mantras and Hare Krishna mantra. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavade Pashkatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Aveta Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada. So we're going to look today at chapter 8 verse 6. So it goes, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram dam dam avaiti konteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. English translation. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So let's just look at a little summary of what this means. So Krishna is talking here about the time of death when we quit the body. We know that anyone who is born will have to die. So at the time of death, it's a time of great pain. Our mind tends to automatically think of that which we're most attached to, or that person or thing that gives us a sense of protection or shelter. So at the time of death, because we cannot control our mind at that time, because we're suffering, we're in a state of suffering, our mind, it does these two things. So we can understand that if throughout our life, if we've been thinking of Krishna, then only at the time of death we can remember Krishna. And remembering Krishna at the time of death, Krishna says, it means that we will go back to Goloka Vrindavan or Vaikuntha, the spiritual abode of Krishna. So it is very important, therefore, if we want to go back to Krishna, if we want to break free from the shackles of birth and death, which is present in this material world, that the whole of our life we need to train ourselves to think of Krishna. We need to be in Krishna consciousness. So it's very, very important to live our present life in the mode of goodness. And always think of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya, says remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. So a pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment. And similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotees for a moment. So by chanting Hare Krishna attentively, carrying out the 9 processes of devotional service, serving the devotees, serving Krishna throughout our life, the Lord is very pleased with our sincere efforts, and he will help us to remember him at the time of death. So let's take a look at this big question. So death in the minds of many people is something unknown. So when there's something that's unknown, it creates anxiety, fear. But devotees are not afraid, because devotees prepare for death. Devotees know what happens after death. It's not a secret to devotees. So do we have to fear death? Death is like the final exam of our life. And if we have prepared for it throughout our life, then at the time of death we will be calm, we will be fine, we will not be afraid. It's like an exam. That's something we can relate to. So we've all been students at some point in our life. We've been to school and we've had exams. So we know that if we prepare for the exam, so we study every day, work out exam questions, revise again and again, then when exam time is there, we walk in very confident, because we remember everything, we're well prepared, we're ready to answer the questions. In the same way, if we are well prepared for death, then we will just confidently go through it like a breeze. No anxiety, just confident that Krishna will be there for us. So a wise man does not lament at the death of others. So we've all experienced, or maybe if we haven't experienced, we will experience death of our beloved members at some point of the family, or friends, or some relative, or we've all experienced death, even death of our pets, or just seeing around us. At the time, it's a time of suffering, it's a time when we're grieving. Of course, Krishna says we should not lament at the death of others, because we need to know that we're not the body, we're the soul, and the soul changes body like we change garments. So there is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita 2.13 where Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yovanam chara tatha dehantara praptir dhirashtatra namuyate. So basically what Krishna is saying here, translation goes, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change, because a sober person knows that the soul is eternal. Deep down, the devotee understands that. Of course, we are human beings, we have sentiments, so we will obviously feel the loss of our loved ones. We know we're not going to have their association anymore, we won't be able to serve them, we won't be able to communicate with them. But deep down, we know, we have the knowledge. So once we understand that, we don't have to be so afraid of death. So here we have a picture of cats carrying. So the top picture shows a cat, a mother cat who's carrying her kitten, and the one on the right, bottom right, shows a cat that is holding a mouse in its jaws. So we're like the cat or the kitten or the mouse. We can choose if we want to be like the mouse or the kitten at the time of death. So basically what this analogy is about is the kitten is being held by the mother, by the jaws, by the same teeth that the mouse is being held. It's being clamped with. But the kitten does not feel fear. The kitten is not in the jaws of death. The kitten is feeling affection and love and a sense of security, whereas the mouse is feeling the exact opposite. The mouse is feeling scared. It understands that it's going to die. It's full of anxiety. It's in a state of panic. So we can see, we can choose, because death is a form of the Lord. Death is a very powerful form of the Lord. So if we feel that Krishna, the Lord, is like our mother kitten there, we don't feel scared at that time. We feel protected. We know that Krishna he's taking us to the spiritual world. So we don't have to be afraid. So, at the time of death, what does a devotee do? A devotee tries to remember his eternal friend, Lord Krishna, and chants his holy name. Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 8.5 that whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So Krishna is giving us the assurance here that we'll go back to him if we we'll go back to him if we remember him. So preparing our consciousness for death. So we mentioned that we need to be in the right consciousness throughout our life, because at the time of death, that's the consciousness we will be in. Whatever we've been, whatever we've had in our mind, whatever we've been immersed in at the time of death, that's what we think about. So during each day of this life, we are developing a particular type of consciousness which will manifest into a particular body at death. So here we can see some very, very famous pictures there in the Bhagavad Gita. So these pictures are there. So at the time of death, the consciousness created by the living being carries him to the next body. If the living being has made his consciousness like an animal, he is sure to get an animal body. So let's take a look at this, these pictures. So here we can see a person who loves to be naked, who loves to show off their naked body to others. Throughout their life, they've been enjoying this. So we can see what happens to them in the next life. They become a tree, because Krishna is so kind that he gives us all facilities to carry out our desire in our next life. He gives us the remembrance of what our desires were in our previous life, and he facilitates facilitates fulfilling our desires. So we can see the tree we know the tree is naked, especially in winter. All the leaves fall and the tree stands bare. So yeah, so let's look at the next picture. So here we have somebody who is very much fond of eating meat throughout their lives. They've been enjoying killing animals, eating the meat of poor animals. So all the suffering that the animals have had to undergo, to be a breakfast, to be a meal, for a sinful person at the time of death, we can see what happens in the next life. Krishna gives us all facility to enjoy meat. The next body is one where there's a set of senses which are highly heightened for enjoying meat. So we see, we know that a tiger has very sharp pointed fangs, and it can tear at meat and enjoy all facilities for eating meat. Next we'll look at this person here who's been enjoying sleeping a lot throughout their lives, sleeping quite a lot. So we can see that person becomes is given a body where all facility for sleeping is there. So we know that bears hibernate for quite a while. And finally, the last picture is, so we can see somebody who is very greedy. So they are given the body of a pig, of a hog, so they can eat all kinds of impurities, mud, stools. Yes. Okay, so that was an illustration, some examples of consciousness and how the next body is governed by whatever consciousness we had throughout our lives. So there's a question then that we can ask. So what if we've been a devotee throughout our life, but at the time of death, because of some misfortune, maybe we're so sick or something, or maybe unconscious, and we cannot remember Krishna at that time. What happens then? So death may come in many forms, right? Car accident, cancer, so many different forms in which death can come. And we have no idea in what way death will come upon us. And at that time, we may not be able to remember Krishna. We may not have devotees by our side to be chanting and to remind us of Krishna. But here is something very nice, very reassuring. Here's what Krishna says. Krishna is so merciful and kind and very reasonable. So Krishna says, if my devotee is unable to remember me at the time of death because of disturbances felt within the body at that time, then I shall remember my devotee and take him back to my supreme abode. That's from the Varaha Puran. So Krishna, he remembers his devotee. We may not remember him, but Krishna remembers each and every little activity, each and every little service we did for him. Krishna remembers that, and he is grateful. So yes, Krishna remembers us. So there was once a Prabhupada disciple called Sudama Prabhu. When he was dying, he saw Prabhupada. Prabhupada actually came to him, and he said, "Prabhupada, you have come." And he left his body with a great sense of relief from his face. So Prabhupada came personally to take this disciple to Krishna. So we may not remember Krishna, but somehow or other he reminds us of him. It's by his mercy that we can remember him. And if we can't, Krishna remembers us. So we can get comfort from that. So here I wanted to show you just some glorious personalities and how they died, so we can get inspiration from that. So on the left we see Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev, such a glorious personality, such a great devotee of the Lord. Bhishma Dev, we know he died on the battlefield. Arrows were shot at him. Arjuna shot arrows at him. So he's lying here on a bed of arrows. Now Bhishma Dev, he was such an amazing personality. He had received the boon that he could die whenever he wanted to. He could choose the moment of his death. So as he's lying here on the bed of arrows, he didn't die, but he waited for Krishna to come before him because he wanted to die in the auspicious presence of Krishna while seeing the beautiful lotus-like face of Krishna. So Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Lord with his mind, his speech, his sight, and actions. He quit his material body for the Vaikuntha planets in that way. Let's take a look at Maharaj Parikshit, another glorious personality. He was meant to die. In 7 days. Now, I have to point out here, Maharaj Parikshit, he is so fortunate that he knew he was going to die in 7 days. But how about us? We have no guarantee that we will be alive in the next 2 minutes or so, even. So we should understand the gravity of the situation that this life is. It's precarious. Death can strike at any moment, so we should not waste our life. We should be like Maharaj Parikshit. When he knew he had 7 days to live, he didn't go off to enjoy material opulences. He was a king. He was the emperor of the world. He had a kingdom. He had opulence. He had everything. He didn't say, oh, well, I'm going to die now. Let me squeeze in as much enjoyment as I can because I've only 7 days to live. No. He fasted. He gave up everything. He went to the banks of the river Ganga and he fasted until death. He sat there in the assembly of sages and he inquired from Shukadev Goswami. And he listened to Srimad Bhagavatam, Katha of Srimad Bhagavatam, from the glorious Shukadev Goswami until death came upon him, until he got bitten by the snake bird. So we should be like Maharaj Parikshit. We should feel that we're so fortunate that we can hear so much about the Lord through the media, through lectures, through classes at the temple. We can chant, we can do kirtan, we can hear kirtan. Obviously, we have a life in front of us. We might not be dying in 7 days. So we should take this valuable opportunity of our life to be like Maharaj Parikshit, to prepare for death. Here we have Sri Chaitanya Leela. We have Sri Krishna, Lord Chaitanya himself here, holding his great devotee Haridas Thakur. So Haridas Thakur, he died while seeing Lord Chaitanya's lotus face, holding his feet upon his chest and chanting Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Haridas Thakur left the world, and after he left the world, the Lord personally carried the body of Haridas to the sea and with his own hands buried him in the sand. Isn't it amazing how the Lord is so caring and sweet and loving towards his devotees? Here we see another great personality, Dhruva Maharaj, ascending the airplane to go to Vaikuntha Lok. Dhruva Maharaj, he had prepared his whole life for death. He was a great devotee of the Lord. Dhruva Maharaj saw death personified approach him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death, and thus he got up on the airplane, which was as big as a house. So we know the story of Dhruva Maharaj, how he carried out austerity because he wanted a kingdom greater than his father, but then he saw the Supreme Lord and he relinquished that desire. He just wanted the jewel of bhakti. Dhruva Maharaj, he had been looking for pieces of broken glass, but what he got instead was the diamond of bhakti. So he, although in the beginning he wanted material things, he understood, he became purified, he understood that all of these material things are of no importance. They're just like broken pieces of glass. And bhakti is the true jewel. It's the diamond. So here we have another story of Bharat Maharaj from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We know Bharat Maharaj. He had been, he was a king. He had relinquished his kingdom. He was in the forest focusing on devotional service. But then what happened is he had the ill fortune of falling for a deer, a baby deer that he raised. He became so attached to it that he neglected all his devotional activities, became so attached that at the time of death, because he had been so attached to the deer, throughout his time in the forest, he was so engrossed in petting, maintaining the deer, he fell down from his spiritual activities, and so at the time of death, his mind was fully absorbed in thought of his beloved deer. So what happened is, in his next life, he became a deer. But by the mercy of Krishna, because he had at one point been a very pious person, he could remember his previous life in the form of that deer. So, in the form of that deer, he carried out austerities. He wouldn't eat much. He remembered the Lord. He went to a temple and he would see the devotees worshipping. He would hear the kirtan. And he had a short life in the form of that deer. And then he took birth again as a Brahmin's son. So a better birth, where he had the opportunity in the human form to carry out devotional service, to remember the Lord. But in that form as the Brahmin's son, he understood his mistake and he didn't want to be involved in this material world and the web of Maya. So he pretended to be a dumb person, somebody nobody would be interested in, so nobody would disturb him. And here we know what happened. That he was employed in carrying King Rahugana's palanquin. He was thought to be a dumb person. His identity as a glorious devotee of the Lord, as a Brahmin, was hidden. So the king didn't recognize him. So he was asked to carry the king's palanquin. But being a compassionate devotee, he didn't want to step on little ants that were on the ground along the way, so he would kind of sidestep them, and that caused a lot of movement, unceremonious movements of the palanquin, which the king didn't appreciate. So he rebuked Bharat Maharaj. Obviously, he was rebuked, and then here the Brahmin, he started giving instructions to enlighten the king, and the king understood then the identity of such a great Brahmin. But that's just to show how at the time of death, whatever we are absorbed in, whatever body we're absorbed in, that kind of body we will get. So let's take another story. We're running out of time, so I'll be very brief here. That's the story of Ajamil. Ajamil was also a Brahmin. He was doing tapasya in the forest, similar to Bharat Maharaj. But what happened is he had the ill fortune of seeing some sort of sexual activity going on with a prostitute, a man and a prostitute. And so we know what happens when the senses dwell on the objects of the senses. Our mind becomes completely bewildered, we become disturbed, and we lose all knowledge, and we become entangled in material world, in the material affairs. So he desired to enjoy with that prostitute, so he ran after her and invited her to become his illicit partner. He already had a wife back home there in the cottage, but he drove his wife away and decided to take this prostitute as his partner. So he gave up, obviously, all his spiritual activities, and he started to engage in abominable activities in order to maintain the prostitute. He would steal, he was very dishonest, he would do all kinds of unspeakable things just to maintain her. And obviously, in due course of time, he had children. But he had the good sense of naming one of his children Narayan. Now we know Narayan is the name of the Lord, and the name of the Lord is none different from the Lord. It's a transcendental vibration. So Ajamil was very attached to his youngest son, Narayan. He would eat with Narayan, sleep with him, call out to his son with affection. So he was very close to his son. So what happened at the time of death? You can imagine. So what happened is he began to think of his little son, Narayan, and he began to call out for his son, Narayan, Narayan, and calling out to his son, Narayan, he died. So because he died, vibrating the holy name of the Lord, it was very auspicious. So immediately the Vishnu Dutas, who are the servants of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, arrived on the spot. But however, you can see in the picture, these very fierce, horrible looking people, these are the Yamadutas, and they serve Yamaraj. So the Yamadutas will appear when a person is very sinful. They appear to drag the soul out of the body and take them to the hellish planets, take them to the court of Yamaraj, who is that demigod who is involved in justice. So he decides based on the sins, where the good activities and the sins that a person has committed in their life. He determines what punishment has to be meted out to that person. So the Yamadutas were present there because we know Ajamil had been sinful. He had been involved in all kinds of abominable activities. So the Yamadutas were there as well. But the Vishnudutas arrived at the spot, and they prevented the Yamadutas from taking the soul to the hellish planets. The Vishnudutas said to the Yamadutas, "One who chants the holy name is immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins, even if he chants indirectly to indicate something else, jokingly, for musical entertainment, or even neglectfully. If one chants the holy name of Hari and then dies because of an accidental misfortune, one is immediately absolved from having to enter hellish life, even though he is sinful." So we can see the sheer power of the holy name, the holy name is so potent that if we chant the holy name at the time of death, this will save us. We'll go back to the spiritual world. So the holy name is just like our medicine, and even if people don't know how potent it is, if we take that medicine, we don't know how potent the medicine is, we'll still get the benefits of the medicine. We get cured. So in the same way, if we take this medicine of the holy name, we will get cured from all bad habits. We will become purified. It will definitely act on us. So these are examples here, great personalities and death, and this is the attitude we have to have towards death. We don't have to be afraid of death. We just need to prepare for it, and that's where Krishna consciousness comes in the picture. So this is a request to all of you. Lord Chaitanya has come in this age of Kali. He came 500 years ago, and he gave us a very, very simple process to save us. And that's just the chanting of the holy name. And it's joyfully performed. It's simple. It can be done at any time. And it's the recommended process for attaining perfection in this life. In the previous ages, previous yugas, there were different methods for attaining perfection. Like tapasya or deity worship in Dwapar Yuga, carrying out sacrifices in Treta Yuga. But we have a short lifespan. As I said, death can strike at any moment. We can easily take to this process and achieve perfection and prepare our life for the final exam, which is death. So I hope I've given a little explanation on this verse. It's so much to this verse. There's so much, but this is just a little glimpse of this verse. Hare Krishna, everyone, and chant Hare Krishna always in your life. Hare Bol.